So thank you everyone for joining us. It's really great to have you all. The pandemic has changed our workplace in more ways than we will ever be able to, understand. But one of the things that the pandemic is really impacted is the workplace, the office, the environment, and also the people, right? And one of the things that's really coming up now as all the organizations start calling their employees back is that how are they going to be ready for the next stage, which is going to be post pandemic? What really has changed, especially when it comes down to the skills of employees? So it is becoming very, very clear that organizations will have to rethink a lot of their processes, a lot of their infrastructure, and they will also have to rethink the skills that they are hiring for. So joining me today are three established professionals, very experienced, and obviously, what they say is really, really going to be very important for all of us to hear. Today, we are talking about the essential skills that we as employees need to focus on post-pandemic as we start going back to office. I have with me Anju Kurian. She is the head of HR for the Omnicom Media Group. I have Sonalika Bhaskar. She is the head of learning and development for BASF. And then I have Gautam Srinivasan, a senior business journalist who's worked across the mediums like Forbes and many, many more. Actually, if I start probably talking about it, he's all smiles already. So welcome the three of you. Very glad that you guys could join us. Thank you so much for making the time and being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for calling us over.
Great. So I'm going to straight away jump into this. And my first question, obviously, I'll go to Anju. Anju, share with us what you have seen. What has happened from the time the pandemic started to now? How did the organizations react? What was your experience? Were there things that you were ready with, and there were things that you were unprepared for? What was it, and how was that experience for the last year and a half?
I think I'll start with the first time that the pandemic hit, and I'd like to say that it actually seemed like a holiday when it started. At least I thought, and we all thought it'll be over within a week, 2 week maximum. And the joy of working from home for the first 2 weeks was great. There were some people who couldn't, some people who could, and we all thought that at some point we'll quickly get back to office and we'll catch up.
Right.
So we started shelving a lot of our work. We started, okay, when we get back to office, we will do it. I think in a couple of months, we realized that this is not going to happen so fast. And I think that's when a lot of things started, spinballing into action.
Right.
And I think the most, not hit is the wrong word, the most department in demand, I think at that time was IT. Making sure that everybody has machines that function, making sure that everybody had net connections that function. Just coordinating with people. People refused to come on screen to have conversations. They were working in spaces that were their personal spaces. No one knew.
Right.
Till such time that we actually, evolved to say, let's create a space where we can all see each other. We would never have been able to see each other in our homes. And then you suddenly got to see people in their homes. So it impacted us actually at various levels. And I think some of the things that I've noted down, and I will say that I think digitizing working processes took an all-time high.
Mm.
And that was one thing that we saw. Relationship between people and work, that changed dramatically. And it's interesting how all of us have evolved. It's not happening to one person, it's happening to all of us.
Right.
Each of us had to actually rebuild our relationship with our colleagues all over again in a very different way. So that I thought was very, very interesting. Digital literacy obviously took an all-time high. Who had heard of Zoom? Who had heard of, attire for Zoom and all the jokes going around, all that with it. The other thing that struck me was, I think the people who found it easy were people who were agile.
Right.
And just being able to, say, okay, if not this, then that, how do I get it? Is that creativity, curiosity that came into play to say, how do I make this work? I think the entrepreneurial spirit hit everybody in that time. Uh, Mobile learning was another one that I think it leaped and bound even more than what it was.
Right.
Suddenly, everybody could take meetings on mobile, which were not really acceptable earlier. There were obviously, I think the some things that changed were for I think for the women folk,
Mm.
especially in the economically fragile this thing, they uh, I think had to adjust to a home atmosphere with working with children, with the aged, having to look after them,
Right.
and so those were actually dynamics that people had to work with and probably are still working with.
Correct.
And those
Correct.
that brings about a big change in the way that all of us
Right.
work and will have to work.
Yeah.
I think another thing that we won't take too much time on this one was on I think mental strain on people being in this situation, and uh, the mental and I think it caught a lot of people on the wrong foot
Mm.
in different stages and in different ways. And therefore, what became very important is empathy.
Mm.
The new way of talking to people, new way of dealing with people, new way of uh, humanly connecting with people.
Right.
Yeah. So these were the points, and I think I will leave Sonalika to talk about
Yeah.
about training and development because it's her core, and she would probably do a better job. But yeah, learning and development also changed. It
So
became
thank you,
very
Anju.
accessible.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah. I think from your perspective, I think the ecosystem was one area where I think there was major focus when the pandemic hit,
you.
uh,
Right.
and then obviously mental wellness and took over from there. Sonalika, was it similar for BASF or was it? And as a training head, how did you respond to this? Do you think it kind of took you off guard, or were you ready for something like this, or were you already agile in your learning and development practices? How did it work for you?
So I think I'd like to answer that in two parts, Gautam. Gaurav. It's interesting to hear Anju talk about the whole ecosystem, and I think that ecosystem is the common thread, right, for
Right.
all of us. Suddenly, from instead of going outside to work, you are confined to home, and then you're dealing with Wi-Fi issues. I think all of us have been through that. But there were a couple of things which we saw, really change. So I'm going to kind of list it down. So while Anju talked about, this maybe is going to last for a couple of weeks, but BASF is a global multinational, and we were already hearing about the pandemic and its effects because we are part of the Asia Pacific region, right? And that means that colleagues in India are connected to colleagues in China, in Hong Kong, in Japan, all across Asia Pacific. So we were continuously hearing the experiences from colleagues in China as to what was happening there, how this pandemic was progressing. So we had somehow, in a way, experience what was happening in China in BASF, but in a very remote way, right? Because suddenly colleagues were not available, or the offices were closed, and it was right now for us an experience where we were on the outside, looking at what's happening in China, and then suddenly that situation hit home. So what did we do over there? We jumped into sort of like emergency planning mode. There was not much time to react, but luckily we have a very good IT infrastructure and IT team. We had a great amount of collaboration tools which were already in use because we are part of a much larger global setup. So there were people who were already used to doing WebEx meetings and using the MS Teams channels to stay connected, chatting, exchanging, documents and stuff. While that existed, what did not exist was, the good Wi-Fi connectivity from home. So we did all struggle through that. But somehow there was an element of like, okay, we have these tools. Let's see how we can make these tools, work for us and also for us to connect to our customer. So it was not just the organization that was impacted; it was also the customers. And BASF was looking to see how can we connect with our customers. How can we meet the demands? Supply chain was completely disrupted. Plus, a couple of the businesses are completely in the essential care services. So, for example, we supply raw materials to companies such as Unilever, Procter and Gamble, right, to make soap, for example.
Right.
And we suddenly don't have the chemicals coming in. So how are we going to respond to that? So I think the first 3 months were a bit difficult, but at the same time, BASF from the global perspective used all its inputs and collaborated to kind of get things going. And in India, we were also able to move ahead. From the aspect of joining formalities, yeah, so we are continuously hiring, looking for the best talent, and we had people who were going to join us on April 1st, and all offices are closed. How do we onboard them was the question. Yeah,
Right.
how do we make them feel part of BASF family? So there were companies that went out and said they revoked the offers, whether it was to lateral hires or even to some campus hires. I'm very proud to say that BASF respected all the offers that had been made, and we even went ahead with our campus program. And we found ways to onboard people into the BASF family even during the pandemic. So that was possible again because of our digital agility. We have ways that we could connect with colleagues, giving them access to the BASF intranet and BASF intra world. Via some smart tools and some smart technology access. So they were able to even work on, on their emails using a BASF account, but through, an interface which allowed them to access the BASF email environment. So we had to get really smart, and we worked closely as the L&D team with our IT team to find ways on how do I onboard people, because as L&D head, I'm also responsible for bringing in the new employees, giving them the onboarding, getting them assimilated into the organization. So that was one thing that kind of really pops up. And I'm happy to share, people really appreciated, all the new joinees appreciated how we were able to give them solutions and bring them into the organization.
Right.
And making sure that, they feel that they are connected with not only their reporting manager or hiring manager, but also with the rest of the organization. Some specific examples, when you asked me as L&D head, how did we respond? So lockdown in India, I think it happened on March 18th.
Right.
And that was for me, I didn't see that as a call where it was like, oh God, what am I going to do? I had an entire year planned with, classroom programs and things like that. But we looked at it, we looked at turning this around very quickly. And what we did was April 8th, which is like, less than 3 weeks, we were out with our first, virtual training program.
Mm.
So this for that, I feel that there were a lot of things that had to be done. I had to lead from the front. I had to bring in my digital capability. I'm not the expert, but whatever I could do in design and instruction, and how do I make use of WebEx platform to connect with employees. We quickly used that and put together the first program, and we had more than 300 people join that session. Yeah, so this was an opportunity for us as the L&D team to really kind of capture attention, because people were sitting at home, they didn't know what to do. Like Anju said, yeah, they were thinking, I don't have Wi-Fi, or this is going to go away. People were not really present, and when they got an offer of like, okay, there's going to be this program, 300 people from across the organization joined in without any nudging, without any pushing, like go to the program, which typically happens with a lot of L&D teams. We just had an automatic sign up of 300 people in the room.
Oh.
And that was also the sign for us to say that how can we use this to upskill our employees. One thing that did emerge very strongly during this pandemic is people have realized the need to be to have that digital capability, to have that digital agility, and that is also something that we are working on, looking to see how can every person in the organization be at least some level, and then how can they move from level A to level B and so on. So this is one of the outcomes that has emerged as part of our learnings from the pandemic. Another thing that happened is, and I spoke about it because we work very closely with colleagues in the Asia Pacific region. So, for example, some of our clients are, we have some clients who are Korean clients, or we have some Japanese clients over here. And then the sales team in India attends to these Korean clients or to these Japanese clients with the support of their colleagues from China, from Korea or from Japan. Now suddenly, these people can't travel, they cannot come in. How are we going to continue responding to our Korean customers and to our Japanese customers? How can we upskill our Indian colleagues to attend better to the Japanese and to the Korean customers, right? So it involved going back to the drawing board and saying, okay, let's get the team from Korea and let's get the team from India, the sales colleagues together in a room. Let's put them together to understand how is Korean culture different from Indian culture and vice versa, and what could be some actions and what are some of the do's and don'ts that could happen to further equip our Indian colleagues to attend to the Japanese or to the Korean customers in a much better and a faster manner. Yeah, so it was all about business continuity. Gaurav, to sum it up, it was all about ensuring business continuity, and we worked continuously to ensure that we have the right tools, the right trainers, and we were there a few steps ahead of before the business could say, I need this, we had a solution ready for them.
Right. Well, it seems obviously that you seem to have managed the situation far better than some of the companies that we've been working with. So it's great to hear, that so much was done. Thank you. So Gautam, when you talk to the CXOs, and I think a large part of your mandate is talking to CXOs within the BSFI and financial world. I'm guessing they would have been pretty fine, right? Because their digitization started probably a year ago, or maybe more than that, right? I mean, were they facing the same kind of problems? What did they tell you about it? What was your discussion?
The progression was pretty much the same from what I hear, from what Anju said, from what Sonalika has mentioned. The progression was pretty much the same, and the issues have been summed up very well by both Anju and Sonalika, where we're talking about digital literacy, we're talking about how relationships within teams themselves will evolve, how agility will come in. And as Sonalika said, they faced onboarding issues, but at the same time, where there is adversity, there is opportunity. The fact that the remote experience enabled more collaboration between teams, which might not have been thought of earlier. So you get a learning experience from East Asia coming to India and vice versa. But to sum it all up, I mean, if all the world's a stage, you've heard from the real players. So I come from a narrator perspective. Yeah. So from my point of view, from all the conversations that I have had, I thought that talent will approach the word value in a new way, and so will companies. Your value is not that you are in the office for the longest hours. Now your value is how many successful outcomes you have enabled for your team and you. And it's it's similar to a team in cricket, where the context of your performance matter. Do you help in getting your team to a draw in a test where you're the tail ender against a strong opposition, versus did you pinch hit a way out for your team in the opening, which helped your team even as the middle order collapsed? Or did you take a hat trick of the last 3 wickets in a match that was already locked? So it's the context of the value that you bring to yourself, your team and your company that could in a sense determine the way you work, even in industries which are seen as legacy or analog. It's not just BFSI. A whole host of industries have embraced this philosophy of let's approach the future of work in a more robust way. And technology is helping solve a lot of the questions around value, whether it's from a productivity measurement perspective, productivity enablement perspective, or outcome measurement perspective. The question is, what happens when you're able to improve your value and showcase it transparently in the system? How does the system respond, right? If they let you go, you have a better chance today to take your skills to the market enabled by technology and even craft value from it independently. If they reward you, it could create a positive feedback loop, which solves a lot of the conflicts, since your productivity and contribution to the team is accurately measured through technology, and the insights that you bring to the table from your experience determine your value. So, while we keep hearing that data might be the new oil, I guess refining it is where the magic is, and that applies to both companies and employees as well. And as an employee, you would be better served tuning your skills to positive outcomes in business value. That's the sense I got from a lot of the conversations. So to sum up, I guess conversations around work have become richer, from both a demand and a supply side perspective, and hopefully technology helps in enabling better outcomes for both enterprises and employees, especially as the hybrid model of work catches on, and we are at least having a conversation around reducing the work week and focusing more on how engaged and productive employees are. So that's my 2 cents on the topic.
Well, that's very beautifully put, actually. I mean, I like the idea that obviously it's going to be the outcomes that matter the most, and it's the results. Once you're getting those results, that's where the play is going to be. So I'll stay with you, Gautam. I mean, end of day, we've been through this experience of whatever 18 months now, and we think that this will probably maybe the intensity may reduce a bit, but it may probably continue till the end of the year. What are the current gaps? Do you think that there are current? So we fixed the ecosystem, right? I mean, that is something we grappled with in the first 6 months of the pandemic. We fixed it. Sonalika, in her when she shared with us, she was able to get training and development also going. But are there any gaps right now that we are experiencing that you think we are yet catching up? As employees, as organizations, when it comes to skills, do you think there are skill gaps currently which are quite visible, which may be hurting some industries? So I mean, what's your take on that? I mean, do you think any skill gaps exist right now?
My view would be, first of all, it's also about understanding the skill sets that you need in this new world, right? Because there are going to be a lot of skills that didn't exist and which are now coming on stream in a very rapid manner. So that requires a more fleshed out thinking also from HR leaders in this is from my opinion perspective, not from a general understanding perspective. And the fact that from how teams interact, that itself. So if I give you the example of data analytics, right? If a company thinks I'm just going to hire a bunch of data scientists and I'll be done, that's not going to work. You need data scientists, you need data engineers, and you need machine learning experts all working together again to work towards outcomes, right? Because each person provides a certain context. So aside from understanding skill sets, it's also about the context of the team where the conversations will go about. And also, let's not forget, it's not just the young and ambitious that define success. In uncertain times, you need folks who are stable and grounded, which comes from experience. So I guess somewhere the conversation will also be around, let's not just keep looking for young. Let's also look at a more experienced skill set to come in a position where we would have thought, we need someone from a 25, 30 perspective. Maybe we should explore 35 to 40. So the job description itself will be fleshed out, and hopefully in a world where flexibility is now gaining more steam, it also allows unique opportunities and skill gaps to be addressed, because now you have talent available if they were not available in your city, even if they can work remotely, right? You have those avenues opening up. So from that perspective, as I mentioned earlier, where the adversity comes in, the opportunities open up as well.
Wow, that's great. So in adversity is opportunity. That's great. So Nalika, I mean, are you seeing some skill gaps currently? Are you think as a training head, learning head, you already had a plan before the pandemic. Has that plan changed? Did you have to tweak it? Did you have to introduce new skills training? Did you have to look at it a bit differently because of the situation?
Absolutely, Gaurav. That happened, and it happened. It needed to happen overnight. I think one of there are a couple of things over here. Yeah, one part is and Anju referred to it, in her part about the employee wellness aspect. I think that has really come to the forefront here during this pandemic, because a lot of times, the employee wellness was taken as an aspect of, you do your own thing. The organization wasn't really looking at it. But now with the pandemic situation and all the experiences that each one of us have had, whether it was a colleague or a colleague's family, we've all been through a lot. And mental wellness, employee wellness has emerged as one of the main areas, of focus for us, in the L&D space. So as also the person responsible for the employee wellness topic and diversity and inclusion in the organization, this is something that we are spending a lot of time on. We have, of course, signed up with, we did also have an employee assistance program partner, and we use them throughout the pandemic to support our employees through the different stages, right, that they were going through. So we found ourselves working not just with the employee, but we found ourselves working with the employee and their families,
Right.
by bringing in topics such as, like, psychological safety. And this was, being broadcast through a WebEx meeting. And we would tell the employees, what, it's not just for you. You can also invite your family members to sit there in the room with you, and listen to the counselor as they're talking about some breathing exercises, some calming exercises, or whatever it was. Yeah, so there was a huge focus on employee wellness, and I think that is here to stay. And I'm very happy that it's here, because as a DNI, a person who works intensely also in the area of diversity and inclusion, we always used to talk about, can we look at everyone bringing their best self to work. And that often at times did not include the wellness piece, right? But now it's
Right.
become part of that. The best self, bring your best self to work, includes mental wellness, physical wellness, and of course, that's going to impact the performance and productivity of the employee, and finally, the bottom line of the organization. So employee wellness has emerged as one of the topics, and we work continuously on that through awareness campaigns, our vendor partner who works closely with us, offering all the kind of services that would be needed on that front. Another thing that has emerged, and this has to do with the fact that we're operating in a virtual environment. Many a times you can't see the other person, or sometimes you can misread the situation completely.
Right.
So this is also something that has come in very strongly. And for the colleagues here who come from the sales and marketing background, I'm sure you must be now thinking you must be now thinking, like, what, it's so difficult to get through to people. Yeah, it's just becoming difficult to stay in touch with customers, because they're always in a call, or they're always in a meeting. So I think that connection has become the challenge, and we have found ourselves spending time on helping our employees on how do you work with customers through this virtually, right? How do you continue to meet your sales target even though everything is virtual, and you're not going to meet the customer, you're not traveling now, etc., etc. So this is something that has come up, and it's not just for sales colleagues. I think also for us as HR, we feel that how do you connect with the employees in a virtual setting? Can you have the person opening up and sharing with you what's going on, whether it's a performance conversation, or whether it is whether it is something personal that they're talking about, or whether you're hiring. It's all being done virtually. So we've had to develop our emotional intelligence to manage these kind of situations, and truly that's one area that has become super important, especially so for leaders, for colleagues who are leading teams. I think this is like the go-to skill, or the must work on skill. And the third piece that I would say, that the everybody today needs to look at and be comfortable with is that digital agility. How comfortable am I working, first of all, in this virtual digital mode? Secondly, do I understand the digital business models that could exist, and how I could continue to contribute and innovate for my organization? So I think these are some of the areas that have emerged, and we are continuously working on bringing in new ways to address this. So instead of having a program where we would bring in a trainer and it would be an instructor-led program, there's also a move of gravitating towards it. We're seeing people gravitate towards more simulation-based programs.
Wow.
Where they have to play the game. It is in a virtual environment, but it is a safe environment. They can play the game, maybe even have a completely negative result in the simulation as far as when it came to running their business. But having had those learnings, when they go out into the real world, hopefully they can avoid those kind of mistakes. So gamification has come into the learning way in a big way. And I see it, I see a big uptick from the employees as far as these gamification approaches concerned. And it's across all generations. Yeah, so it's not just the young ones who are happy that we're using gamification. I'm also seeing, colleagues from the Gen X, equally comfortable in navigating through these games.
Right, right. That's very, very interesting. And obviously emotional wellness, EQ, we know that it has always been critical for especially leaders and team managers. And I guess with this kind of an environment, it's probably coming more into focus, and probably that's something that everybody needs to start working on. So that's really great. And I think the gamification point is well taken. I think it is something that's really growing. And let's see how this goes. I mean, in the once we get back into office, whether all these things remain, they don't remain, will have to be seen. So Anju, I mean, is it similar? What how has it been 18 months? Any new skills or skill gaps that you noticed within the Omnicom Media Group, or you guys were anyways tech savvy, media savvy? Media has always been ahead of the curve, right? So
media savvy, I think tech savvy, I think most of our staff is tech savvy. But they were tech savvy in the office scenario. I think the shift was in the home scenario.
Right.
And of course, year and a half back, if you asked, the debates we used to have on creating a work culture that was work from home was unheard of.
Right.
It became acceptable literally in a jiffy. I think a couple of things that it's really been covered by Sonalika and Gautam, but I will maybe reiterate some of them. One is, I think, building an online culture. A culture which is going to be built online is something that I think we are evolving.
Right.
I'm not sure anybody has all the right answers. I think everybody in their own ecosystem is trying to develop it.
Right.
And that will be here to stay, because I'm not sure anybody is getting back 100% to work anyways. There will be mixed models that will come up.
Yes.
And we're expecting that to be, I think, a larger part of the industry. I think our purpose is also getting redefined. It's very interesting because somebody who's started working from home in a remote place doesn't feel the need to come back and work.
Okay.
The person feels that they can deliver and probably deliver better.
Yeah.
That scenario. So those kind of changes are something that we need to address, because these are all skilled for us. These are all skilled staff. Yeah. And we won't want to lose them just because they are sitting
somewhere else.
And the purpose has changed.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting thing to absorb and probably work with. And digital agility is, of course, something which is I think it's something that is a given now. The other interesting piece that I feel there is a gap, and I think all of us will be building, is on the behavioral changes that are happening because of pandemic. I think if we look at each and every individual in the organization, they have gone through some change that they would not have had this pandemic not hit.
Yeah.
And that behavioral change, I think it's important for organizations to build a resilient team. And how to build a resilient team? It's only going to be through actions.
Right.
And at least we at Omnicom are investing with building that resilient team. Right. And it's actually, I think, for us HR people, it's a new interesting journey that we've all embarked upon.
Right.
So these are my couple of points that I had, which.
Yeah, I mean, I think what struck me most was the purpose, the redefining of purpose. I think that is something that many of us at times, tend to miss, simply because we think that, okay, once the pandemic is over, things will probably, we hope that it'll probably go back to the same. Which is something which even I was saying maybe 6 months ago, oh, it's okay. Once this is done, we'll all get back to office. But I think the realization is now crept in that there's going to be a hybrid way of work. And obviously the future of work is going to be super different than what we have been used to in the last maybe hundreds of years. So yeah, very interesting. So I'll stay with you, Anju. What according to you, going forward, as employees of people who are going to be working and pursuing a career, what are the 3 top skills as per you that you would be looking for when you are hiring? And and are these going to be very different than what they were earlier? I mean, or is it, or are they completely new? I mean, we would just like to hear, because that's the thing that we are chasing here, right? Our outcome is what are the three things as employees we need to be pursuing to ensure that we have a successful career going forward. So what according to you is that?
So to me, agility is actually one very, very critical requirement for anyone. And those who don't have the natural agility need to actually learn how they will be agile in this world. And that's extremely important is what I feel. Then there is, again, digital literacy is a given.
Right.
And what is it? What part of the digital literacy are we looking for? Is what we need to define. Most of our work is linked with the machine, and I think we need to redefine and put the expectation out there. What are we looking when we say digital literacy? So that's point two.
Yeah.
And the third one for me falls into I think something that Sonalika had also touched upon would be how empathetic are we towards each other, and therefore how socially intelligent we are or emotionally intelligent we are when we are talking through the box.
Yeah.
And how do you connect and resonate with people? How do you listen to what they are saying? Because you have cut out the seeing skills often. We absorb a lot when we are doing the full person. There is body language we pick up. There is nuances we pick up, which sometimes get missed in online conversations.
Right.
And therefore, very often we tell our people, switch on the camera. We'd like to see you, but even then you miss out. So
True.
this area of empathetic social intelligence is something that is a skill that I think people need to have or develop either ways.
Right.
Consciously develop.
Right.
So these are my few
Right.
points.
That's great. So agility, digital, ability, as well as being empathetic. I think that's really cool. So Nalika, I mean, do you have a term for this? I mean, Anju really, said a really great thing that when we are online or virtual, we tend to miss these cues, right? So I'm sure, learning and development, there must be some term. You must be calling this skill something.
Not really, Gaurav. I don't think that term has been defined so far. But it very much refers to emotional intelligence, and I think that's kind of really the topic which is dominating conversations, because it's all about, do you understand yourself? Do you understand others? How are you reading people? How are you reading the situation? And how aware are you, of the environment around you? So I think EI is the dominant conversation, the topic in the conversation. Maybe at some point there is a term which has come for the leaders, though actually they've started talking about digital leadership. And when they use the term digital leadership, it's not referring to, whether yes, you can design, or you know how to, code and artificial intelligence and all that. It's none of that. Digital leadership is just about can you function and thrive in this environment which is dominated by technology, and it's a different world of working, virtual way of working. So digital leadership has come in, and like I said earlier, we are also trying to come up with a way to measure and validate where are people as far as their digital capability is concerned. So there is a term that we have coined here, and we're using the term DQ, referring to a digital quotient, right? So there's IQ, then there is Q, and then there is DQ.
That's nice. Yeah. So Sonalika, what are your three skills that you would be looking for in the employees in post-pandemic? What would your advice be to all the people who are listening to you now? What are the three skills they should develop?
So I think we've already covered the skills part, right? Just the digital capability, and I think I would maybe focus a little bit more on the softer skills. Anju talked about resilience, right? So I think it's really important to build resilience in yourself, because things are changing extremely fast. And we are in a very complex situation where we sometimes don't know, right, what is the best model or what is the solution that would work. So a lot of things are, we're stumbling across answers through trial and error. So that really, needs one to be resilient, right? That you will have setbacks and it's okay, and I can get over it and keep going. That's one thing that I would encourage people to work on. The second thing that I would encourage people to work on as a skill for themselves to survive and to thrive in this environment, um, is also your own wellness. Do focus on that, on your mental wellness, especially mental and physical wellness. That is the one thing which is going to determine so many other things for you, yeah, in the future. If you're healthy today, if you are mentally fit today, then you are up for any challenges that keep coming at you. There are many curveballs being thrown our way on a daily basis, and we need to be we need to be at our physical and mental best for that. So that's another area that I think I would focus on. And of course, the third thing that I would say is, just stay in touch with what are the trends. Yeah, given that if you come from media, for example, yeah, what is it that would make you relevant in today's world and in media, or what is it that would make you relevant in today's world of manufacturing? So continuously keep refreshing your skills, because what I have seen is the half life of any skill in today's world. Previously we used to say it's 5 years, but I think currently it's maybe 2 years or 2.5 years. So the half life of any skill has reduced tremendously. So keep yourself at the edge, keep learning new things, whether it is related to your area or to an allied area. I would say it never goes waste. So keep yourself open to learning.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very interesting. Uh, Maintaining learning agility, I think probably that's something that, all of us will have to probably actively pursue that. Thank you, Sonalika. So, Gautam, the 3 skills that you think will be needed to have a super powerful, successful career.
Well, I think I'm not left with many options, considering Anju and Sonalika have outlined most of the skills that are required, and they're right. And it's interesting that the word resilience keeps popping up in a lot of the conversation, and that has also shaped the thinking in terms of balancing technology with, say, creative problem solving, entrepreneurship, innovation, and most importantly, emotional intelligence, as Sonalika mentioned. So I'm biased in terms of the first skill, which I suspect will be more in demand, because it's about developing communication skills. So in the firm that I started, our pitch to clients was always minimum communication and maximum work. And that doesn't mean we'll not respond to your emails, but we also used to measure projects in terms of how many emails did we exchange with the clients. The lower the better, because then you know that the client, you have understood what the client needs and you have delivered on their expectations. And that's the element of the magic, right? When your client says, how did you know that that's what we needed? And that's how you come in and add in your product as a sort of a calamine notion to address that itch, to paraphrase a famous line. So developing communication skills, both verbal and written, is something which I see helping an individual in many use cases, right? Because if you communicate well, you are going to be able to open up a lot of opportunities. And one thing which I personally saw was, it's power to the introverts. It's the reverse side of the coin, where this technological interaction helps some of the introverts that I know be actually more comfortable in their interactions with teams, and they were able to come out of their shells, which was a surprise side effect, but a good side effect nonetheless. And I guess that brings me to the second point, which is something Sonalika and Anju has also touched upon, which is the ability to collaborate with diverse teams and be versatile, because, the world is your oyster. You are going to interact with a variety of people from different regions, from different sensibilities, and you need to understand them, they need to understand you. So you need to have that mindset of collaboration with everyone, again, in the service of a positive outcome. Which brings me to the third point, which is when you understand how tech works from your use case, you're also supposed to understand analytics. But in a broader factor, you're also supposed to change your thinking, I guess, from a solutions perspective, where if you're part of a team, if you keep bringing up the problems, the question is, well, where are the solutions, right? And we are in a world where, delivering value, staying ahead of the competition is now measured in milliseconds. So rather than telling me these are the three problems, if you came to me with three solutions, maybe me as your team cohort, we could work together and create an even richer solution. So in my opinion, these are the three sort of non-traditional ways to approach skilling and see how you could develop as a better person, build your digital quotient, as Sonalika said, but also build your emotional intelligence, as Anju mentioned. That's my 2 cents on it.
Awesome. That's really great. I mean, obviously, being agile in the new world, being digital savvy, being empathetic, being able to communicate. I think these are no brainers. I mean, these are the skills that will actually dominate when people are going to be hiring post pandemic. It was a very interesting conversation, I must say. So I just I think it's time for us to also now check whether the audience has any questions, get some questions from them. I'm sure there would be a few. So why don't I open the floor and ask the people who have who are listening in to put up their questions if they have any. And I will need to go to my chat box to check the questions. Okay, so there's one straight away. So what value does communication skills hold in any hiring? I mean, so Purti is asking, how, I guess the question is, first of all, when it comes down to hiring people, how will you actually assess this? And I'm not sure which one of you would probably want to answer that. So I'm going to keep that open. But, we said that, they need to be sensitive to non-verbal communication. They need to be sensitive to understanding that, it's going to be online. So how when you're hiring, what is going to be the mechanism to really understand whether the candidate or the employee you're trying to hire has that skill? How would you kind of measure it or assess it? Are there any thoughts on this? I mean, what do you think? And how will that value, what will the value be for that?
Anju, Sonalika, you want to take this from a corporate perspective? Then I could bring in from a media perspective.
I think communication is an absolutely basic need. I think what Gautam told us, it's a critical, and at least in our business, if we are not able to communicate and get through to our clients or understand them, we actually lose a lot more. And it doesn't mean speaking English well or speaking a language well. It means being able to actually understand what the person is saying and be able to respond to that. And there are many techniques to actually to assess that.
Yeah.
And the simplest one is actually having long conversations and replaying those conversations. In fact, one of the early things that we learned when we were growing up was, if you can have as a leader, if you can have an hour-long conversation with the colleague that you're wanting to recruit, then go for it, because obviously there's a good flow of communication there.
Right.
And the other bit, obviously, giving them projects and all are the other ways that we do assess.
Right.
No, that's a very valid point. In fact, it reminds me of the time we hired a graphic designer. When Anju is right, it's not just the fact that you speak English well. And I remember this conversation with the graphic designer we hired, who turned out to be one of our best assets, for the simple reason that when I spoke to him, he didn't speak in polished English, but he explained to us how a digital workflow, it's not technically part of his prerogative, but the fact that he thought about his work also from a broad viewpoint and said that these are the things which you could look at to improve your digital workflow, to reduce the time taken to deliver a project to a client. To me, the fact that while he could not communicate it well in English, but the fact that when we said, हाँ भाई बताइए आप क्या कर सकते हैं, that's when he got into his groove. So somewhere the other side also needs to recognize that, because at the end of the day, it's about value generation, right? Whether it's for the company or for the employee. But the fact that you need to build on that is essential, because it could open up new and better opportunities for you, right? That the graphic designer I speak of now works with a large conglomerate. He worked on his communication skills because that's something we told him. saying that if you work, your opportunities open up. It's rare for technically an employer to tell an employee that upskill yourself so that you might get a larger profile elsewhere if you want it. And the fact that he stayed with us for 3 years explains that, he liked the experience and he told it to us. And when he left to join the other project, we actually had a party for him. We said that you've done it. It's a profile you would not. And he said that, it's not a profile I might have approached earlier, but the fact that I've worked on not just my media skills, but also my communication skills gave me the confidence to actually approach or apply for that profile.
Also in communication, Gautam, there's another interesting thing to note that, you should be able to extract what you want from the person in terms of conversation. It's not just a black and white process.
You're telling that to a journalist. So
that's right. That's why I addressed it to you.
That is one of our learning experiences when you come on the field, right? Where you are kind of lost. You're just there with a bunch of others and highly competitive. But I guess somewhere there is also that learning experience where you're put in the fire and then you learn through trial by fire.
How do you extract? Yeah.
So some interesting questions also coming up now, and I think they have a common thread, and I think this is where probably Sonalika you could contribute. It's since motivation is Tani and Amrita both actually have a similar thing. So during COVID times, everyone's working from home. How does one manage their time and balance their work and personal life? And Tani's question is, since motivation is one very important skill for success, how do we keep employees motivated in a time when the pandemic, in this time of pandemic, apart from rewards and compensation? So is there any initiative that was kicked off which actually, kind of helped employees? And I know, Sonalika, you mentioned something that BASF actually worked with some EAP partner or, is there anything interesting that you can share which probably can benefit some of the listeners?
Sure. Absolutely. Now, I want to come to the first question, which Amrita has put in about the managing the time and balancing work and life, personal and work life. I think that is so important, right? And it's all about, choices. So Amrita, there is no recipe or there is no, guidebook that I can tell you that this is what, if you do this, you will be able to have balance. Yeah? First of all this whole thing about balancing work and personal life can also be looked at differently. And I would like to bring in that different perspective is, if you're enjoying what you're doing, right, then you shouldn't be worried about the balance, right? Having said that, here are some things that I think we maybe as a country, I'm just speaking about India in general, we don't do very well, which is, for us, time is a very flexible concept. Yeah. So if the meeting is supposed to start at 9, it means 5 to 9 for somebody, 5 minutes past 9 for somebody else. So I think this whole, you need to get really disciplined with your own time management, and that has to come from within you, right? The choice that you make. What does my time mean for me? What does it signify for me? And what are then the tools that I could use to manage my time? So, for example, for me, my Outlook calendar is really what keeps me going, and it helps me to kind of track how my day is going. What do I need to attend to? What are the priorities for the day? What meetings do I have? I really use my calendar to keep myself, to keep my workday organized. And as far as my personal life is concerned, I also, then I have some slots, where I say, okay, so and so time to so and so time is my yoga time, and I'm not available to anybody, and I talk about it so that my team knows I'm not going to be available to answer phone calls because I'm in my yoga session. And I just make it that it's my time. So I think it has to come from within you, Amrita, as to what choices will make you happy and will make you enjoy that moment. On the motivation part, this is a really difficult topic, yeah, because I think motivation is, again, it's intrinsic. Again, it comes from within. And Tani, for you, as to how can you keep your people motivated, I think you need to understand what do they value. Yeah. So, for example, there could be an employee in your team who is very, whose values are about family, right? So maybe if you are their manager, and if you just spend some time with them having a conversation on how is your family doing, and checking in on them. Maybe that's all that person needs, right? To feel motivated and to keep on performing. It could be, it could vary from individual to individual. You could have individuals whose values are about, it's not family, but it's about recognition. So, what is it that I can do and what will get me into the center of attention? So it's really about understanding your employees and your team to say, what is the value, or what is the belief that this person brings to the table, and can I connect with them on at that particular level? So it's going deeper. It's like the iceberg principle. Don't just see what you see above the water, which is what the person wears or what city that person comes from. Dig a little bit deeper to understand what really drives that person, what the values are, and that will also help you motivate your team and keep your employees motivated.
Wow,
I'll just take a pause here. Yeah.
Thanks, Sonalika. I think that's very helpful for Tani also and Amrita. Abhijit is asking a very interesting question. He's saying that everybody talks about resilience and agility, but how can a fresher, someone who's just passed out, is probably yet trying to get into the workforce and has just got into the workforce, how do they inculcate it? Because for them, it's probably a concept that's new, possibly.
Can I take that one?
Yeah, sure.
So I don't think resilience is something that is really taught.
Yeah.
It actually starts from the day you're born. It's not something that, as corporates, we picked it up today. But I mean, if I would do a resilience, if say people should be resilient, it actually starts from home. It starts from, from doing simple things of understanding yourself, understanding, when will you be resilient is when you can handle whatever is thrown at you. And life throws different things. So I don't think there is a book for resilience, but there are techniques that I think have come to the fore, that are taught that can make you resilient. And the interesting thing is that if you make our workforce resilient, which is if you make one leader resilient, actually the person transmits that resilience to the family, to their team. So it's actually I think very grateful to have tools today spelled out for us to learn from,
right,
and absorb.
Right.
So really, it's not something that I think every fresher, every campus recruit that's hired can come with it.
Yeah.
No, it's a very valid point, because at the end of the day, it's new experiences which define your resilience, right? I mean, just look at me. You would not have imagined that I come from a background of scientists, right? So most of my classmates are all engineers, and they're all leading different technology firms and stuff. I went into media, a very rare phenomenon. But again, as a matter of building resilience, it was also about gaining new experiences. It's only when you do something new, you will be comfortable in the new. So this is, for me, this is in the defense of new. You want to build resilience, gain new experiences. That, I guess, is a way for you to also build a bit of an armor around yourself and say, I've seen this, I've seen how others handled. Maybe I can learn from their experiences and work on this, but I need to be there.
Yeah. So that's very interesting, and thank you for saying that, actually, because I believe that while when Anju said that you're born with resilience, and I agree with that. Sometimes it's inbuilt. And then again, she obviously added that there are techniques and there are ways that you can build. I think one thing that that's probably worked for me in the past is doing something that I'm not comfortable doing. Small things. It could just be really, really small things. Instead of picking up something with my right hand, picking it up with the left hand. It's just that small. It's about being comfortable with the uncomfortable. And that's and like Gautam said, doing new things, doing different things. I'm saying do small things which are not comfortable, make yourself uncomfortable, and your resilience will build by
That's a nice way to put it, Gaurav. I would also say that get over the fear of being wrong.
Yeah.
The minute you get over the fear of being wrong, you can then
kickboxing lesson.
Yeah.
So okay, so questions are coming in, but we have only 2 minutes, so I'm just going to browse through the questions and try and see if we can just kind of put them together. How can effectiveness of an employee be measured if a benchmark? And how do freshers? Okay, how can okay? This is an interesting one. How do you elaborate on can someone elaborate on digital quotient? I mean, when we say that somebody needs to have a digital quotient, what exactly are we saying? I mean, can somebody give two actionable real things?
So, Gautam, I think I was the one who brought that term into the conversation. So with the way I was referring to it, it is, and it could be defined depending on what industry you belong to and what role are you looking at. But when I talk about digital quotient and the way we are looking at it is, it refers to, for example, for a particular job, right, or for a particular role, what are the software, what kind of systems should the person be proficient in, right? It could also be about, what kind of tools are you using, collaboration tools are you using in your organization, and your comfort level with them. And depending on that, you could create like a digital quotient for the employees within your organization, whether it is department wise or whether it is role wise. It would depend on your structure, but that's one way of understanding what the term digital quotient could mean and defining, right? So for, you could say, for an entry level job, it means the person needs to know Microsoft Office, the person needs to know SAP, and they need to know how to be, on Slack or whatever it is. For the next level, it would be, you start adding plus plus plus, and you kind of build your levels, and you build, then along with that, you need to look at how will you upskill the employees.
Well, that's
So
very
that's
interesting.
for
Yeah.
Rochelle, who's asked this question. I hope, Rochelle, that answers the question.
Yeah. I mean, the way I also look at digital quotient is not just being able to use tools, but it's also about being able to collaborate and communicate. This is something that Gautam also picked upon, that being able to communicate
Yes.
clearly and
Yes,
get
the collaboration tools, exactly. Yes,
yeah,
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 absolutely.
yeah. So that's great. We've got questions coming in, but as I promised everybody, it's already 4, and we obviously want to put a hard stop and not take away more of your time. I'm just going to sum this up. We obviously spoke about the challenges around ecosystem and how we managed to fix it. We've spoken about how agility is really becoming very critical. Resilience is something that needs to be built. And obviously, we just spoke about digital quotient and how important it is going into the future. Thank you so much, all 3 of you. It was really an enjoyable hour. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did, and I hope the listeners also enjoyed it. Thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing so generously. Have a lovely day. Have a lovely day, and we will obviously get back to all the questions that have been asked. We will definitely respond to all the people. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day. Thank you. Thanks, Gautam. Thanks, Sonalika. Thanks, Anju. Really a pleasure to
Thank
have
you
you.
so
Thank you,
much,
Gaurav, and
Gaurav,
thank you,
for
audience.
having us here. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.